In May 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson crashed his car into a ditch on a rural back road. He was uninjured, so he called his parents for a ride and told them he was just outside the town of Lind. His parents drove to the outskirts of Lind and flashed their headlights into the darkness. Over the phone, Brandon told them he was flashing his car's lights right back, but neither side could see a single trace of the other. Frustrated, Brandon made the decision to abandon his car and walk cross-country toward a glow on the horizon he assumed were town lights. But walking through these sprawling, repetitive green farm fields in the middle of the night offered zero distinct landmarks to guide him. He stayed on the phone with his father for 47 continuous minutes while he walked. Then suddenly, Brandon yelled, "Oh shit," and the line went completely silent. There is a common misconception that his phone immediately disconnected at that moment. It didn't. His parents stayed on the open line for several minutes, calling his name into the silence. Hearing that unbroken connection allowed investigators to rule out the theory that his phone had been instantly submerged in deep water. A minor car accident and a simple wrong turn had escalated into an untraceable vanishing act, all while the victim was actively communicating with his rescuers. Immediately after the phone went dead, Brandon's parents rushed to the local police station to initiate a search. Instead of a rescue team, they hit a legal barrier. Because Brandon was 19, officers explained protocol dictated a mandatory 24-hour waiting period before they could file a report or search for a missing adult. The protocol meant that while Brandon was disoriented and wandering into the dark, the authorities were legally required to remain inactive. Investigators looked to cellular tower pings to finally pinpoint the physical coordinates of Brandon's phone. This map displays the 25-mile gap between where Brandon thought he was and his actual location near Taunton. The uniform agricultural grid means every intersection looks identical at night. The lights he walked toward were likely farm equipment or a town in the opposite direction. Brandon also suffered from near total blindness in his left eye. When you combine that physical limitation with the repetitive geometry of the agricultural landscape, the environment creates a fatal geographic illusion. To trace Brandon's exact cross-country route, investigators deployed specialized human remains detection dogs. The dogs successfully tracked his scent for 3 miles, leading searchers directly to the steep embankment of the Yellow Medicine River. This diagram illustrates why the search stalled here. Shifting wind patterns and temperature drops scatter human scent particles across vegetation in zigzagging lines. Below the surface, agricultural drainage systems pull trapped scent into underground pipes, depositing markers miles away from the physical source. Between the shifting wind and the network of underground drainage, this flat, open landscape is capable of scattering and hiding physical evidence as effectively as a dense forest. The tracking data ultimately painted a confusing picture. The dogs traced Brandon's scent into the water, out the other side of the river, and then lost it completely at a nearby gravel road. Based on the sudden expletive in the final phone call, the prevailing theory is that Brandon slipped on the muddy riverbank, got wet in the freezing spring runoff, and succumbed to hypothermia shortly after in a nearby field. Finding him required physical access, which hit a strict legal wall. Several private landowners refused to let search teams onto their properties, fearing damage to their seasonal crops. The strict protections of private property laws, combined with the vast scale of the environment, effectively hid the physical evidence of his final resting place. For his parents, the tragedy was compounded by the realization that the critical window for Brandon's survival was lost to bureaucratic red tape. They organized and launched a legislative campaign to change how the state handles these cases. In 2009, the governor signed Brandon's Law. It mandates that law enforcement must begin a prompt investigation for any missing adult if dangerous circumstances are present, removing the arbitrary 24-hour waiting period. The Minnesota fields kept Brandon's exact location a secret, but his tragedy dismantled a fatal legal myth, ensuring that search teams will now deploy immediately for any missing adult who needs them.